Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
As you would have expected, the failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump is the subject of Cut the Clutter today. But you know what? While I've been reading up on this and also watching the coverage and generally reflecting, a question arises in my mind constantly. And the question is, what is it that I can tell you that you don't already know? What is the clutter, right? What's there to declutter? Because this is saturation coverage. You see it all the videos are there, all the Maharathis of the world, the big pundits, they are all talking about this. What is it that we can add to this? We also know that the Americans have an assassination culture. 4 serving presidents have been assassinated. At least 3 key presidential candidates, starting with Theodore Roosevelt, then coming to Robert Kennedy, who actually was assassinated, and now Donald Trump. They've been serious attempts on 3. One, unfortunately, successful in 1968 on Robert Kennedy. 4 serving presidents. Then serving presidents have had attempts made on their lives. There is a whole laundry list. It will run on the screen as we talk. There's no point my reading up all of this. There is also among the more prominent and more recent attempts like Ronald Reagan, right? So in that situation, we know all about that culture. We know about the conspiracy theories and the controversies, particularly to do with John F. Kennedy's assassination. Given all of that, what is it that I can tell you? So one thing that stands out to me as I watch all the stuff coming out of the US debate, it is the call for unity. So both sides in the US debate are giving a call for unity, including Donald Trump. If anything, Donald Trump's own reaction to this attempt on his life has been quite subdued and stable by his standards. Normally, you would have expected him to just raise the tempo, but I find this a little bit of a change. In fact, more than a little bit of a change, a significant change that he is also trying to dial down the temperature. So what is this call for unity? This is basically because it does seem that both sides in America now think that the polarization that set in the politics there from 2015 onwards, since the rise of Donald Trump, that has now become toxic for America. It's become toxic, it's become bitter. We've seen this manifest in many ways, including in the protests on campuses over Gaza and also the responses to that protest. We've seen that debate play out in the US Congress. So this is a very heavily polarized society on a left and right basis. So what is right today? The right is the Republicans, the left is the Democrats. Now, the thing to understand is the clutter lies in the fact that Americans have not always been like that. It's not like the Indian situation. In India, you would say, because that's the situation we know best, comparisons are sometimes not so apt, right? I could have said Great Britain and America, 2 old democracies, but we don't know so much about those democracies. I think India, to that extent, is a more convenient comparison. If we look at India, the left-right binary has been quite clear ever since the Congress party lost its domination of national politics. Until the mid-70s, the Congress party was unchallenged, mid-70s, early 80s, and then a left-right binary emerged with the rebirth of the Bharatiya Jansangh as Bharatiya Janata Party. So that became a party of the conservative right. It hasn't always been a party of the conservative right in the sense of its economic policy. In fact, sometimes Narendra Modi's government, the first Narendra Modi government, I even described it as a government of the Hindu right but economic left, or in short, the Hindu left. But yet that clear ideological distinction is there between a right of center party, that is the BJP, and a left of center party, which is the Congress party. Then we have debates over how far left of center, how far right of center, and then parties evolve their own nuances and issues from social issues to economic policy. Now that said, in America, it's a very complex thing. It's a complex thing in the sense that anybody of my generation, even of my generation, we started quite far back, even of my generation, because I am in a way somebody whose first exposure to an American leader was John F. Kennedy, right? So I am from the Kennedy era generation. But if you go backwards from that, then this left-right binary wasn't quite so simple in America. In the past in America, it is the Democrats who would today be described as party of the right and Republicans who would be called party of the left, although it wasn't quite left-right in that sense. And a lot of the complexities in American politics today and some of the polarization that you see also comes as a result of that. So I will share with you two links. These are two links of old but short 6-minute, 7-minute Vox videos, each one talking about the evolution of one major political party in America, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And these make us understand how this debate has evolved and how left has become right and right has become left. So look at the Republican Party. We call it the grand old party and we presume that this must be the oldest party in America. After all, Conservative Party must be the oldest party. And because we call it the grand old party, some people have also started calling the Congress Party the grand old party in India, GOP. Now, Congress Party, the logic works because it's the oldest political party in India, but with Republican Party, the logic doesn't work because it isn't the oldest political party in America. It is actually the Democrats. Americans actually had a party called Whigs, WHIGS. These were British liberals who wanted more power for parliament and less to the monarchy, who then also supported American independence. They had a party, and as that party disintegrated, say in the 1820s, out of that came the Republicans. And what made that party disintegrate? It was the race question. Should you allow slavery in the South or not, in the southern states of America or not? Or should you allow slavery to be expanded to more western states, that is the states of Nebraska and Kansas? So they were people, by and large, because these were liberals, they did not want slavery to spread, they wanted to stop the spread of slavery. But at the same time, there were people who thought that if you allowed this slavery, there will be cheaper labor and that will hurt the interest of white workers. So the party split. Out of the party emerged the Republican Party. Now, before the Republican Party, America was ruled. When the Whigs broke up and the Republican Party emerged in 1854, that is when the party was founded. Before that, America was ruled by the Democrats, right? Democrats then were people who you would today call conservatives, because Democrats then supported slavery, they supported white supremacy. In fact, how different for the Democrats, you can understand if you see the history of their first president. The first president, Andrew Jackson, was a former general. He contested elections in 1828 for president, and as he did, he was dismissed by his rivals as a jackass, right? He responded to this with a double defiance by choosing the ass or the donkey as his party signal, which then endured after that. You might ask me, where did the Republican Party symbol, the elephant, came from? So see this cartoon. This is a cartoon from 1876, which shows the Republican Party then like an elephant, demolishing all the problems. And what are the problems? Those are the problems you see today in any political discourse, including most prominently inflation. So that then became an enduring symbol of the Republican Party. And Andrew Jackson, it is from Democratic Party, who came up with the Indian Removal Act, which involved rounding up Indians, native Indians from 5 major tribes and driving them west of the Mississippi River, right? That if you look at the Democratic Party today, it is difficult to reconcile with that. But that is how the parties and ideologies have evolved in America. So 1854, people who broke away from the Whigs and set up the Republican Party, they were actually anti-slavery activists. And they came out in opposition to this Kansas-Nebraska Act. So they grew in popularity, and by 1860 they had become so powerful that Abraham Lincoln, their candidate, won the presidency. As that happened, Abraham Lincoln initially said that he will not disturb the slavery, but he did very soon, and that led to the American Civil War. That is not something that will be very familiar to people in India because we don't read American history. Now, I'm very conscious and very cautious because my own original reading of American history, American political history, is very, very poor. So I'm speed reading and understanding and trying to digest it for you. So 1860, Lincoln becomes president. He then rejects the idea of slavery. Then 11 states in the South on the issue of slavery and race, they decide to secede from America. They declare themselves to be Confederate states, and that starts the American Civil War. That is something that is more familiar to us. It was at the tail end of that Civil War that Abraham Lincoln gets assassinated in 1865, April 15th, by John Wilkes Booth. Why? The idea being that Confederate states should be allowed to exist as they were. So that is when the assassination culture started. But once again, remember, this is when the Republicans were the liberal party. I'm using that expression very liberally in terms of a very liberal interpretation. Now that carried on like that, and Democrats were still a party that stood for old power, old elites. Now, what happens when you come to power, then you grow your own power circle, and that's what happened with the Republicans also. In the course of time, a lot of the Republican supporters in the north of America, they grew very rich, and the robber baron era came in. Robber baron era came in, lots of Republicans became very rich, and soon enough, they began to be seen as a party of the rich. This generally carried on until the 1920s. 1920s came the Great Depression. So until the gravy train was running, the economy was booming, things were doing fine. But once the Great Depression came at the end of 1920s, that's when the Republicans lost power, and FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, came to power for the Democratic Party, and then he made a switch from what used to be the Democratic Party's ideological positioning, and he announced the New Deal, which involved a great expansion of the American state and the greatest state-run growth and development program, massive public investment. That is what defined, in a way, the Democratic Party as it exists today in terms of its economic policy. And as happens in politics, in response to this, in the course of time, Republican Party went the other way. That is, believer in small government, freer markets, and Republicans did not get power back until the end of the Cold War, when Eisenhower won his election. And once again, after that came Kennedy. Kennedy was assassinated, then Johnson, and so on. And by this time, by the 60s, race became a major issue in America. Because until now, the Democratic Party had a lot of people in two minds. People in the southern states, Democrats in the southern states, did not want total racial equality. Although laws had been passed earlier bringing in a degree of equality, but overall racial equality wasn't there. This was the era of Martin Luther King. It was in this period in 1964. In 1964, after Kennedy's assassination. So this was a debate and process that had gone on in the Kennedy era. Shortly after his death, in 1964, the US Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This was a turning point in US political history, and Democrats by this time as a party was firmly on the liberal side, although even among the Democrats in the southern states, there were differences. Now these confusions, the repositioning of the Democratic Party, at the same time the reposition of the Republican Party. So the beneficiaries of these divisions among the Democrats were the Republicans. So 1968, Republicans got power. Between 1968 and 1988, there was only one term, Jimmy Carter, from 1976 to 1980, when the Democrats got power. Otherwise, the Republicans had an unstopped run through this period in spite of Richard Nixon and the Watergate scandal. By the end of the Reagan era, the Republicans had been completely repositioned. They now became a party of free markets, small government, family values, and also Cold War hawkism. And the fact that Ronald Reagan won the Cold War became a big success, and this is also the time when American economy grew very, very rapidly, as did the economy of Great Britain under Margaret Thatcher. So this was the golden era of the new liberal free market economic. Now post Reagan, the two sides, Democrats have and the Republicans, have got more clearly identified as left of center and right of center. Now the Democrats have themselves had internal debates on who's more progressive and who's less progressive. So the progressives who won in 1964 with the Civil Rights Act, they are very different from the progressives that you see in the Democratic Party now. And similarly among the Republicans also, there were divisions. However, as the Republicans realized that they were losing too many elections, they understood that one reason they were losing too many elections to Democrats was that they were seen as anti-minority. They were seen as too pro-white American and too anti-minority, and what used to be minorities earlier had now become quite numerous and very powerful, because a lot of people had migrated from the Spanish-speaking countries to America's south, from those borders, that is Mexico and beyond. Those populations had come in, they had got naturalized, they now counted for a lot of votes, and those votes started going to the Democratic Party. In fact, Clinton's first election, exit poll showed that more than 70% of the Hispanics voted for Clinton or the Democratic Party. It is to that some of the Republican leaders responded, particularly Marco Rubio, an ambitious young politician who's always been a kind of perpetual presidential aspirant. So he joined hands with the Democrats to pass a law that gave the Hispanic populations, Hispanic immigrants, a route to legal citizenship in America, and they became voters. In the Republican Party, particularly in its white base, white, non-college educated, small town base, this was seen as a betrayal. This was seen as a betrayal, and also an idea that sab mile hue hain, that for votes you've now sacrificed on your basic principles. Basic principles being there should not be so much immigration. And that is what led to the rise of Donald Trump in 2015-16, because while Marco Rubio might have signed up with the Democrats, might have led the Republicans to sign up with the Democrats to legalizing these crore plus Hispanic prospective voters, Donald Trump was talking about building a wall on the border with Mexico. So he rode that insecurity and in the process once again repositioned the Republican Party ideologically. It is important for us to know that if we want to understand the current polarization where increasingly the minorities of all kinds, now Hispanics may be a minority, but they're a very large minority, right? Blacks may be a minority. The percentage of blacks in American population is about the same as, say, Muslims in India, right? But if you add up all these minorities, this becomes quite a critical mass of votes. Against that, Donald Trump is uniting what is essentially a white American base. And that has now once again brought in a kind of racial edge to polarization in America, which was missing for some time. Now, we cannot make the case, we cannot argue that that is what has led to this assassination attempt. Now, Thomas Matthew Crooks, the person, the 20-year-old who carried out the assassination attempt, he is a registered Republican Party voter. Now, we don't know where he's coming from. We don't know whether he's coming from in the sense that he does not like Donald Trump's policies, as the Democrats may not like his policies, or liberals may not like his policies, or maybe he doesn't like his policies as a classical Republican may not like his policies. We don't know any of that. But the fact is that this is a deeply divided, polarized country with easy gun culture. So this 20-year-old also has easy access to an AR-15 rifle. That's a kind of firearm that most of India's uniformed forces usually don't carry. It's more potent than your usual AK-47, etc., etc. It's a very deadly firearm at a long range. So he has access to that. He's able to carry that. He's able to get training to use that. And how well trained he is, he misses Donald Trump at 130 yards, right? At 130 yards, he misses him by maybe 5 millimeters. Another 5 millimeters, and Donald Trump might have been hit in his temple. So that is a combination of polarization, complexities within that polarization, an easy gun culture that leads to this series of assassinations and assassination attempts in America. Now, as we talk about this and we talk about assassination culture in America, somebody could turn around and say, look who's talking, you Indians. You've had a history of assassinations as well, going back to Mahatma Gandhi. It is true. But the other thing that's true is that barring Mahatma Gandhi's assassination, which was most likely ideologically motivated, the other assassinations in India, Indira Gandhi's assassination, Rajiv Gandhi's assassination, those are the two most prominent in our history. Both were rooted in militancy, separatism, and terrorist movements. They had not been driven ideologically. Because we have to understand in conclusion that all politics is polarized, because politics in democratic societies is about conflicting ideologies, and that means polarization. But the question always is how bitter that polarization gets, how complex is that polarization, and the complexities that lie within those polarized systems and polarized societies, and then finally how easy it is to access firearms of such high potency and high range. All of that combined to give America this peculiar and unfortunate assassination culture.